It's that time of year again. It's the MLB offseason, where all the top free agents are up for grabs. Now, we just got to talk about where these players are going to sign. So, let's talk about that.
Hold up, wait until the whole team show up, yeah. I'm in Neverland, can't grow.
Hey, how's it going, guys? So today I'm going to be doing a quick video just talking about the top free agents that are available at the moment in the MLB offseason and just giving my opinion on where I think they will end up and talking about the teams that are interested in them and sort of analyzing if those are the right fits for those type of players in the situations they are in at the moment. So a few free agents that I'm going to be talking about are guys like Gerrit Cole, Strasburg, Marcell Ozuna, Madison Bumgarner, and Anthony Rendon. So let's get right into it. So some big free agent signings have already been happening, and it's kind of crazy that things have already been happening this early, just because in the last two seasons, not a lot of teams have been really jumping out of their seats to go and sign these big free agents. As you saw it last year, Craig Kimbrell and Dallas Keuchel didn't sign with a team till after spring training had already started, and Craig Kimbrell hadn't had a team even after the season had already started. It's interesting to see teams a lot more aggressive to go out and get those sort of free agents, just because last year we saw it as a big sort of major free agent year because Bryce Harper, Manny Machado, Josh Donaldson, those sort of top players were going to be up for grabs. And everybody thought that there was going to be all these sort of changes from team to team. It was going to be very exciting, but it seemed to be pretty boring throughout the entire offseason until Bryce Harper and Manny Machado really started to speed it up after their signings. And now we're looking at it this season. Rendon has already signed with the White Sox, and now we're starting to see a lot more teams meet with these sort of free agents very early. You know, we saw Gerrit Cole and Strasburg meeting with the Yankees in the last 2 days, and we've also seen more teams emerging for these sort of different big free agents. And so it'll really be interesting to see how the offseason sort of plays out in these coming months to see if the entire MLB could be changed by the end of this offseason. So we're going to start off first with the biggest free agent on the market at the moment, Gerrit Cole. Now, after an amazing season that he had with the Houston Astros, leading them to a World Series, and he also did something pretty amazing. He had the longest winning streak since 1912, with 19 wins in a row. And also throughout the season, he was looked at as one of the most dominant and impressive starters in the entire MLB. And so it'll be really interesting to see, now that he's this big free agent, how much money teams are willing to spend for him, because as you've seen it in multiple different years, to be able to win a World Series, you have to have a very efficient and strong starting rotation. And there's a lot of teams out there that are in need of aces and also just pieces to add to their rotation to really get them over that hump. And one of those teams that has been very aggressive in the persuasion of getting Gerrit Cole to LA is the LA Angels. And they have actually said that they're going to pay whatever it takes to be able to get Gerrit Cole on their team. And this really stems from Mike Trout signing that big contract last season and them not really having any sort of competitiveness or even getting close to playoff contention in the last 3 years. And there's a lot of analysts saying, wow, I can't believe Mike Trout signed back with the Angels. They haven't really done anything to give him any sort of support in the last few years that he's played there. So when you have a player on your team that's considered the best player in the world, you got to put a surrounding cast around him if you expect your team to be in the playoffs or even to compete for that World Series later on in the year. And so the Angels have seemed to really ignore the starting pitching position in the last couple of years, and it's really hurt them. And it's been very confusing because they've really relied on guys like Garrett Richards or Matt Shoemaker to really get them over that hump and really make that big difference. But if you're going to expect guys that are number 3 to number 4 starters to really give you that sort of competitive advantage against these top teams that, for instance, the Astros had Justin Verlander and Gerrit Cole, and they dominated throughout the year. And so if you're expecting your team to compete against those teams with a very minimal starting rotation, I don't really understand what you're thinking, because it really makes zero sense to me. And you even saw it at the start of this year. They're really starting to really focus in on that starting pitching, because they just traded for Dylan Bundy yesterday from the Baltimore Orioles. So it'll be really interesting to see how other teams like the Yankees or the Dodgers are going to really unload a lot of their money to be able to get this big free agent in Gerrit Cole onto their team, because really any player of his caliber is going to make a huge difference for the upcoming year that he's going to be playing for them in years to come, because a lot of teams have been very nervous to sign players to these long-term deals, because when they get to 35, 36, they're not as productive, and they're also not worth that $25-26 million that they're being paid. And so it'll be really interesting if Gerrit Cole is going to get that 5 to 7 year deal. And quite honestly, I think he deserves it, because he still is a very young pitcher. And so it'll be really interesting to see if a team like the Yankees, who very interestingly enough drafted him in 2008, and an interesting fact is, while he was growing up, they were his hometown favorite team. It'll be really interesting if he wants to go and play for his favorite team growing up, or if he's going to want to go back to where he grew up over in LA. It'll be really interesting. So let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. So now talking about the guy that was the World Series MVP just a month or two ago, is now on the free agent market and has a ton of buzz around his name. Now, some of the teams most interested in Steven Strasburg are teams like the Philadelphia Phillies, who just signed Zach Wheeler, but they said that they are still really interested in signing another starting pitcher. The New York Yankees, who are in much need for starting pitching and a boost to that starting pitching rotation, because they have a lot of old and underperforming guys that they've been trying to rely on for a lot of years now, and they're really the starting pitching is really prohibiting the Yankees to really get over that hump and really make it into the World Series. Now, we've seen them in the last few years get to that ALCS, but the lack of starting pitching and the lack of quality starts that they've been getting from their current starting pitchers have really prohibited them to be able to get to that World Series. And we've seen it. They haven't been to the World Series since 2009. And so it'll be really interesting to see also if Steven Strasburg is going to go back to the team that drafted him number 1 in the Washington Nationals, because he's talked about a lot how important that team and that culture in the city of Washington is to him. And it'll be really interesting if he goes out there and takes the money that is offered to him by another team to go and explore his options and go and see if he's able to win a championship on another team, or if he's able to find new possibilities in a team like the Dodgers. And quite honestly, if the Dodgers get Steven Strasburg, this is the guy that'll put them over the hump. This is the guy that I believe will help the Dodgers get that very long-awaited World Series that they've been trying to get. And with him and Clayton Kershaw, it's a scary rotation. That's a really scary team. And so it'll be really interesting to see how the discussions and the different meetings that have been going on with Steven Strasburg do play out. And so let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Where will he sign? So in my opinion, the third best starting pitcher on the market at the moment is Madison Bumgarner. And, there's a lot of teams that really tried to trade for him in these last 2 trade deadlines. And he's actually been the top trade candidate, it seems like, for starting pitching in these last 2 years, because he's such a dominant pitcher. And you really saw it in the 2012 and 2014 World Series. And because those are what really made him famous. He was the most dominant pitcher in those 2 playoffs. And he's, in my opinion, one of the main reasons why the Giants were able to win those 2 World Series, because he put that entire team on his back. And it was very interesting, quite honestly, and it made absolutely no sense to me at all why the Giants didn't trade him in this last trade deadline, because they do have one of the worst farm systems in the MLB, and they are a team that haven't had a winning season in the last 3 years. So, maybe kind of should have made a lot of sense for them to trade Madison Bumgarner, who was eventually going to sign with a different team, for some prospects, and that would also help out their financial situation a little bit better. But, that's just me, and, now they don't really have that great of a position in San Francisco. But, it'll be really interesting to see if teams that are interested in him, like the Cardinals, like the Yankees, like the Twins, and another team that would be interesting to see if they go out and sign him is a team like the Chicago White Sox, who have a lot of money to really spare and really went all in on Manny Machado and Bryce Harper, it seemed like, last year. And they're a good team that I think would be really in need of a top starting pitcher, because they have a lot of young starting pitchers that are starting to develop at the moment. But if you have a guy that is going into his 30s and has had a lot of success throughout his career in the MLB, I think it would be really great to have a veteran presence to be able to help groom those starting pitchers and really show them the right way to be able to play in this league. Because, Madison Bumgarner has been very successful in his past seasons that he's played, and I think he would be a very cost-effective starting pitching option for really any team that's in need for starting pitching. And so I think it'll be really cool to see if the Twins really go very hard on Madison Bumgarner, because guys like Steven Strasburg, like Gerrit Cole, they're really out of their price range. And the Minnesota Twins were one of the top offensive teams in the MLB last year, and they were also one of the most surprising teams in the MLB last year. And their number one need is starting pitching. And so I believe that Madison Bumgarner is going to be that guy to really get them over that hump and really make them competitive in the AL for a championship next year, because I think that they have really been sitting on their hands a lot in these last few off seasons with the amount of money that they do have available to them. And I think it'll be really cool if the Minnesota Twins are able to get a top ace guy to really show all those young guys really how to play the game right. And so I think it'll be really interesting to see where Madison Bumgarner lands. There's a lot of different possibilities, especially where there's so many different options for top starting pitching in this free agent market, and so it'll be really interesting to see which team he goes to. So now getting into the top hitter, in my opinion, in the free agent market is third baseman Anthony Rendon. And some of the few teams that have been very interested in signing Anthony Rendon are teams like the Texas Rangers, are teams like the LA Dodgers and the Washington Nationals. Now, everybody was hearing about the extension talks that Anthony Rendon and the Washington Nationals had last season and how they weren't really able to get on the same page. So it'll be really interesting to see if in this offseason, if Anthony Rendon does come to a feeling of he just wants to go back to the team that drafted him, that he has such a great culture with, that he has such a great relationship with not only the team but the players that are on that team. And it'll be very interesting to see if he does go back with them, or if he wants to get out of his comfort zone and sort of make that big money that he does really deserve in the free agent market. And especially with such a very thin third baseman free agent market, and with third base being a very hot commodity position at the moment, with not a lot of teams having a very strong third base presence, I think there's a lot of teams that would be able to really value not only his bat but his defensive ability at third base. And especially with him hitting .314 with 34 home runs last year, any team would love to slap that right in their lineup to be able to help them get over the hump. And so if a team like the Texas Rangers, who haven't spent a lot of money in the last few years and really do need that sort of burst of motivation and burst of excitement throughout their franchise, I think he'd be a really good fit over in Texas. And also, like I said, with Steven Strasburg, I think that Anthony Rendon, if he goes to the LA Dodgers, he's going to be the player that puts them over that hump, and he's going to be the player that helps them win a World Series. Because if you get another power hitting hitter in that very strong lineup, I think it's going to be very dangerous. I think the LA is the most glaring team that actually gives him that big contract that he's looking for, because they have the money of disposal, and they've had a lot of issues at third base in the past few years, and I think he'd be very versatile as well with that team, being able to play shortstop or third base. I think it'd be really interesting to see how he really fits with any team that he signs with. So let me know in the comment section below, where do you guys think he's going to sign with? So now getting to, in my opinion, the second best hitter in the free agent market, Marcell Ozuna. And I really thought, quite honestly, with the season that he had with the Miami Marlins and getting traded over to the St. Louis Cardinals, I thought he was going to really develop a lot more than he has in the last few seasons. Because we saw it in his last season in Miami. He can hit. He hit .312 with 37 home runs in his last season with Miami. And so the guy can hit. And he's a very good versatile outfielder and a very good defensive outfielder. I think he's also going to be able to give a lot of value to really any team. And with the seasons that he's had in the last few years, isn't really going to give him that big giant contract that he really, I bet, expected to get, especially after the season that he had 2 years ago in Miami. But he's going to get a really nice contract that will also give a team a very good valued outfielder that is able to hit for power and really able to drive a lot of guys in as well. And so I think a lot of teams do really need that power hitting outfielder, and those are teams like the Texas Rangers, like the Diamondbacks, like the Cardinals, which would be really interesting if he does sign back with them. But those few teams do really need power outfitters to really help them propel that offense, to be able to get that offense some excitement, as well as drive in those runs to be able to get them over that hump. Now, you saw it with the Diamondbacks last year. They traded Paul Goldschmidt, and they were sort of going in a direction of retooling, trying to do rebuilding in a very quick manner by getting MLB players and sort of young players through free agency as well, to be able to get their team a little bit more young and quick and built for the future. And I think Marcell Ozuna would be a perfect fit in that outfield and a perfect fit in that clubhouse. And he would also be able to give them a very good valued and low valued outfielder, because they don't have an immense amount of money to be able to give, but especially with Zach Greinke off their books now, they have a lot more money to be able to dish out, to be able to help their team be able to get back to contention like they were a few years ago. And especially like a team like the Rangers, who have emerged as a team that really wants to spend a lot of money this year to be able to get their team a lot more excitement, because they haven't really contended in the last few years. And I really think that Marcell Ozuna would be a great fit for that lineup, to be able to give them that sort of excitement and give them that firepower to be able to drive in those runs, to be able to get them back into contention. And so I think it'll be really interesting where he does sign and how much money he does sign for, because I really think that any team that he really does sign with are going to be very impressed and surprised about how he performs and bounces back after his few poor seasons. And so those are just a few of my opinions on the top free agents that are on the market at the moment, and sort of where I believe that they might go. And so let me know in the comment section below where you guys think either Marcell Ozuna, Steven Strasburg, Gerrit Cole, Madison Bumgarner, or Anthony Rendon are all going to land by the end of this offseason. It'll be really interesting. I'm very excited to see how this all pans out and where the MLB will really look at the end of this offseason, and how we're going to really look at each team, and it'll be really interesting to analyze. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Please give me a big thumbs up if you really did like all the points that I made about the different free agents. And also don't forget to comment down below your opinions on the stuff that I talked about today. Don't forget to follow my Instagram and my Twitter. I post every single day on those different accounts, talking about the biggest sports news topics that have been going on. And don't forget to also go down and subscribe. I do a week in review every single week and make these sort of little videos every single week, just analyzing different sports topics. I love making these videos every single week. I greatly appreciate all your guys' support, and thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. See ya.
The bent, that's big views. Boarded the plane, won't be back to May. Now I can't camp it with you.